Hello and welcome back to the Oh My Gosh, You're Glowing podcast. My name is Lindsey Walker. I am your host. And today I am bringing you the gem show update on my entire gem show experience in Tucson, Arizona that I just returned from a few days ago. So if you've been following me on Instagram, you know that that was a huge event that I went to this past weekend. And if you don't know, actually, I am from Tucson, Arizona. So it has a special place in my heart. And there's a lot of history there. And also the way that I experience it now is so differently than how I used to see it when I was little. And so it's really fun to go back and experience it. So the Gem and Mineral Show is really just this crystal and rock show that brings people from all over the world to this one space. It's like the woo and all the geologists in one place coming together with all these rocks, crystals, gems, healing tools, all of the things. And I've been going for the past 3 years. And for the past 2 years previous to this, I would share some, just small updates on Instagram and share some of the rocks and gems and some pictures and videos and things like that. And this was before I had a podcast. So I've never recorded any type of recap from the Tucson Gem and Mineral Show until this year because I just started my podcast in this past October. So it was only right to bring this recap to this podcast because let me tell you, once you're surrounded by rocks, gems, stones, minerals, healing tools, people, all of this connection, all of this energy, you are glowing from the inside out. These rocks and gems are just flooding your body with so much energy. But it's also what you make of it. It is totally what you make of it. You could just walk in there, see some rocks, talk to nobody, walk out, not have an experience. But if you're like me and you go with an open mind, you go to make connections, you go to experience new things, you go with this intention to experience miracles and magic every single day, you will have an experience of a lifetime. And that is what this Tucson Gem and Mineral Show gave to me this year in 2025. And I am bringing the recap, I'm bringing the lessons and my personal experience to you on this podcast because, if I go to an event, if any in-person event is happening in my world, it is so much more than an event. It is a massive healing experience. It is massive lessons and revelations and breakthroughs and aha moments all packed into one, including all kinds of body healing, all kinds of body experiences for me to just become aware of. And that's why I love bringing these to you so that you can also have a better awareness, a better understanding of how to really work with your body, how to understand your body when you're out in the world experiencing very similar things. Because when I share this with you, it gives you this opportunity for you to say, oh, I've experienced something similar. Maybe I should look into that a little bit deeper, really pay attention more, or listen closer to myself, to my body. So if you're listening, you're not seeing this. And I encourage you to be watching this particular episode. And if you are watching, you already sort of know why, or maybe you don't. But I am currently wearing a hat that holds a lot of energy. And I'm going to tell you why. But I had to wear this hat when I recorded this podcast. It just was only right. If you saw my stories on Instagram, and by the way, the stories are all saved in a highlight. I'm going to be posting a little bit more as well. They're on my I Am Lindsey Walker account. So if you want to go see the highlights that were shared from this year's 2025 Tucson Gem and Mineral Show, they are on my I Am Lindsey Walker Instagram account in the highlights. And if you're listening or watching to this podcast live, I may not have shared everything just yet. I'm going to tell you a little bit why I did that or kind of what happened there. But if you listen to this later, everything should already be posted and you can go check it out. So this hat has a lot of story energy. It just has a lot of energy in general. And you guys didn't hear the story of the hat because I didn't start the podcast until a few months after the hat purchase happened. But I did post a little bit about it on my Instagram stories. So if you followed me, you may have heard a little bit about that. But essentially, to really wrap up and give you the gist of why this hat is just like so magical to me. And it really just showed itself this weekend. Trust me, this hat taught me lots and lots of lessons. It's kind of crazy, kind of wild. And this is really an opportunity for you to realize like how small something can just like propel you in life or really just like give you a new perspective. It could be a thing, it could be an experience, like it could be anything for you. For me, it's this hat. But I was in Nashville in August of 2024. This was the vacation right before I went to Denver to Living Brave Live and just like sent my life and my business in a completely other direction. And in that time, in that moment, I was calling it my life upgrade. So I ended up actually designing this particular hat. I'll give you a little bit of I'll show you a little bit side to side if you're watching so you can see it. And I was in Nashville and this custom hat store was actually below our room at the hotel. And we knew that going in. And I had totally had an intention to create and design a new hat. And the hat design experience in itself was a total up level, completely on all fronts, just the experience, the girls working with me. I just knew that this was going to allow me to cultivate a new identity that I was creating. This is in August. Immediately from that trip in Nashville, I went off to Living Brave Live. Literally, I flew from Nashville to Denver. Like I changed my flight and everything to make that happen. And so when I had planned all of my outfits for Living Brave Live, I took a lot of creative and artistic time to put together my outfits because I really just wanted to show off who I felt like I was on the inside, on the outside. Well, this hat was not necessarily part of those outfits, but I ended up creating and designing this hat right before. And then obviously I had to bring it with me. Like when you're on a plane, like, and you have this giant hat, like you're wearing it. That's it. That's how you're getting it from place to place. You're wearing it on the plane. And so I wore it literally everywhere and it just kind of like lived with me the whole time because I couldn't really put it down, which was fine. And it just elevated every single outfit that I had. And I had no idea. I had never planned that. Like I didn't plan this hat to be in any of the outfits. And then I end up wearing it all weekend. And then it just becomes what I call my life upgrade hat. And then I end up joining the Vortex, this massive mastermind full of all these multi-million-dollar successful entrepreneurial women, artists, creatives, entrepreneurs, coaches, all of these things. And this hat just held that energy. And I just felt like when I put it on, I embodied that full up-level energy that I was really calling in for myself because at that time I was feeling really small. I was feeling really unsure of myself. There was a lot of shifting going on. And so that was the first time where I was expressing outwardly how big I actually wanted to become, but inside I felt so fucking small, like so small. Being around those women was like the biggest upgrade for me. And it was so weird because there was so much disresonance between my internal and my external world. But for the first time, my external world, my external reality, how I was dressing, how I was looking, how I was presenting myself was this big energy, this big confidence. And inside I was dying. I was literally dying inside of how small and lack of confidence I felt. And so that was really the start recently, my most latest upgrade. There's been many, but this is the most recent one where I felt like I really had to bring my internal world up to the level of my external world of what I was showing other people, myself, and what I wanted to express. So that's where this hat came from. And I really hadn't worn it all that much. Like, I would save it for special occasions. Of course, it's a very fancy custom hat. Literally the entire thing was customized from the brim to the top to every single thing I chose and customized and designed myself. So I do like to keep it, special. I am like careful about where I wear it, all of those things, right? And then I like to plan my outfits for the Tucson Gem Mineral Show to really, it's a fun time to express. It's a very creative space. There's all these, yes, it's rocks and gems and minerals, but there's this creative energy. There's this energy flowing of like different types of people and just, I don't know, for me, it's this place to really express myself creatively with my outfits. I haven't necessarily done as much of that in the past because it's always been kind of cold. And so I'm trying to like layer and be cute at the same time. This year is definitely warmer. So there was like a little bit more room for artistic ability in my outfits because I didn't have to worry about layering so much. In fact, I had probably more layers. But as I was planning my outfits, my mom had sent me a text. So my parents live there. And so I was going to stay with my mom. My aunt was coming in. The three of us were going. And she's like, hey, make sure you bring a hat to wear because it's going to be super sunny. And in my head, immediately, the first hat I thought of was like a ball cap. And I was like, man, that doesn't really like match my outfits I really want to wear. It's not really the vibe I was going for. So then I look and I have these like bigger brimmed hats. And I have another one that I got in New York. And I was like, oh, that's like a good winter hat. That would be like a nice one to wear. And then I look over at this one. It's like sitting by itself. I store it with the top down because that's how they told me to store it to make sure that the brim doesn't get all bent or anything. And then I look over at this one and I was like, oh man, I would love to wear that hat all weekend. Like there's so much energy in that. But I was like, I don't know. I think it's too nice. Like, I don't know if it might be kind of windy or dusty. Like, I don't want it to get ruined. Gosh, and then I have to wear it on the plane. And then, it's so big. Like it might like bump into people. Like, and as I was thinking about it, this might seem really ridiculous or this might seem really insignificant. But the way that I was thinking about it was, oh, I wouldn't be able to make myself big. I need to make myself small. I'm in the small plane. I mean, it's regular ass plane, but I'm in a plane with other people. So, I can't be too big. My energy, my body, I can't be too big. I might run into someone. I might disrupt them. That was kind of like the energy that was going on in my head as I was thinking about wearing this hat. When I tell you the smallest of things can teach you the biggest lessons, tune in to how you're making decisions and thought processes that are going on, because this hat could tell 500 fucking stories at this point. So these are the things that I'm thinking about. Then I'm thinking about, oh, I don't know. Then I have to get my luggage overhead and this hat's going to be in the way. And, I feel all this energy when I'm wearing it. Like, what if I bother other people? What if I'm like, my energy is too big for other people? Now I'm trying to people please and like wondering what other people are going to think about my fucking hat, which is probably nothing. They probably don't give two shits. And meanwhile, this is all the thoughts that are going on the night before I'm supposed to leave. And I had to get up at 3 a.m. for like a 6 a.m. flight. Anyways, long story about that one. It was early. We'll just put it that way. And I didn't get to bed as early as I would have liked to. So I was laying in bed trying to fall asleep and these thoughts are just like rolling through my head. And I consciously knew, I was like, I need to stop thinking about this because one, this is just sending my mind into a spiral to the point where I can't go to sleep because I'm thinking about which hat to wear. I had laid out two of them, this one and the other one. It was like a tan one that I got from New York. And I finally was just like, you know what? I'm going to wake up. I'll put on my clothes in the morning. I'm just going to decide in the moment, which is great if you aren't rushing out the door for a flight and making sure you're not late. So that's what I decided. I spent way too much time thinking about this damn hat decision and thinking about what other people would think, thinking about how, like, literally I'm going over all of the different scenarios of how I'm going to get my luggage up ahead. And that might not be anything that you are considering or concerned with a normal piece of luggage. But when you go to the Gem and Mineral Show and you come home from the Gem and Mineral Show, your bag is now full of heavy ass rocks. So it's like this full clean and jerk overhead. Luckily, I used to do CrossFit, so I actually really know how to lift heavy things over my head. That's like, one of my claims to fame with some heavy ass luggage. I can get like a 50-pound luggage over my head in the aisle. It's quite the skill. Didn't know I needed that, but here we are. And here I'm like imagining myself with this hat in the way and all these things and da 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 da. And I'm like, wow, this is a lot of fucking energy to worry about a hat. What other people are going to think of me wearing this hat? If I'm going to be able to get a luggage, like all these things, worry, 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 worry. I'm like, this is such a waste of energy. And I finally just let it go to sleep. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to decide in the morning, like this is, I need to be done with this. I tell you all of this. You're like, why the fuck are you telling me this? This is important because I know you do this too. I know that there's small decisions. It could be what you're wearing. It could be jewelry. It could be a hat. It could be one small thing. Maybe it's what you're eating for breakfast, for dinner. What are you going to do at this time or that time? The smallest decisions, but how much time and energy are you actually spending on them? And how much brain power are you utilizing to think about all the potential scenarios that could or could not happen if you did this or that or this or that? I know because I just told you about how I did it. So ultimately, lo and behold, I wake up and I knew when I looked at the two hats, this is how I made my decision. It was not a gut decision. And I often make a lot of decisions with my gut because I'm a sacral authority in human design. When I just really feel called to something, I feel pulled. But I will tell you, where you can go wrong with that, if you are a sacral authority, if you make gut decisions in that particular way, what can happen is my ego got involved. And my ego said, well, this is an expansive energy. When I put on this hat, it did not feel comfy, which is why I did not have this gut response to, yes, go with this one, wear this one. My ego did not feel comfortable. When I thought about wearing this hat and bringing this with me, it felt expansive. I knew it was going to be expansive. I knew my energy feels differently. I feel differently when I'm wearing this. I knew the other one was comfortable. I knew the other one I wasn't worried about. It was just kind of, whatever. It's a nice hat. Like, it doesn't do anything for me. It's not bad. It doesn't hold that energy. It doesn't hold that frequency in my mind, in my energy field. And so I didn't necessarily get that sacral response and that sacral yes because there was that uncomfortable feeling of expansion. So ultimately, I did push through my expansion. And, when you walk out the door to leave for a plane, you walk out the door, what's on your head or on your body, like that's it. You made the decision, like the end. As I'm walking out the door and, questioning my decision of what I'm wearing and all this stuff, which, most people are like, what the fuck is wrong with you? That doesn't mean anything. It's just a small little thing. Yeah. But that small little thing can turn into, you have no idea how much it turns into on the other side. You have no idea what kind of energy you invite in by wearing certain things. It doesn't necessarily have to be new. It's just the way you present yourself. How are you feeling? People really don't always understand or give credit to clothes or design or how you present yourself and what kind of energy you're in. They always say like dress for the job you want, not for the job you have. Well, how about dress for the life you want, not the life you have, if that's different? It doesn't have to be this gap, but if I'm wanting to present and exude myself in a certain energy in a certain way, show up like it. If that means dressing differently, if that means looking differently, then do that. And for me, that was stretchy. For me, that was edgy. For me, this was like, I've been saying I want to step into this bigness, this big energy. And I've been doing that more with my voice on this podcast, which is amazing, which is great. If you know me well, or even if you started listening to this podcast at the beginning, you can probably even tell that my voice has changed. It's deepened. But that's in one aspect. Now it's showing up visually and now getting in person with people. And when I show up in a way that I'm really confident in, or in a way that I know is feeling expansive, and I just feel this expansive energy, I'm going to show up differently. And if that means wearing something differently, if that's going to really expand me and that's going to help with that bigness and that being seen, that expansive energy, that's what's going to help. And for me, it was this hat. So it was only right to wear this hat when recording this podcast because this hat basically became part of me over the weekend. And there were so many things that I just exuded this confident energy. I just exuded this, like, not everyone's looking at me like in a, I don't know the right word, but like a, I'm full of myself kind of way, but just like a, I'm really confident in myself. I know who I am. And I wanted to bring that energy forward. That's the energy I'm creating, not to draw attention to me, to be like, oh, look at me. Like, look at how great I look. Like, that doesn't do me any good. But it's really about me, more about me shining my light, shining my energy outward and feeling confident in that and letting other people actually see me. In the past, when I was younger, I actually truly felt invisible. I used to say, no one remembers me from high school. I actually was invisible. I would talk to people later on in college that I went to high school with, and they had literally no idea who I was, and they were introducing themselves. I was like, yeah, I know exactly who you are. We went to high school together. I was like, it's okay. I was invisible. I would always say that. And so breaking out of that being invisible bubble and saying, yeah, I'm fucking seen. And not only am I seen, I'm being seen in my confidence, in my power, and who I want to be and who I am. And in this energy of like, yeah, I'm an energy healer and I'm going to own it. And this is what I look like. This is how I show up. And yeah, I own what I do. And owning that from like, did I need a hat to do that? No. But is it just this way to amplify this energy that's already within me? Yeah. Play with it. Play with different things for you. Maybe that if this is resonating and you're like, whoa, like never thought like a hat could do something like that. It's not the hat. With anything, with any tool, with anything outside of you, it's never the thing. But you can use tools to invite in energy to really work with. I always say this, and I said this to someone yesterday, never give your power to anything outside of you. But you can utilize tools, you can utilize things that are quote unquote outside of yourself or, clothes, accessories, tools, things that are outside of you to play with that energy. But there's a difference between giving your power away. There's a difference between me sitting here and saying, this hat did this for me. Oh my God, if I didn't have this hat, I wouldn't be able to do XYZ. I would have never been able to, feel this energy and feel this magnetism. Versus, wow, when I put this hat on, I really expand myself. I really ignite that confidence. And it's a tool that I'm utilizing and tapping into that energy, but I'm not giving my power away to it. Because if I took off this hat, I'm still the same person. So there's a difference. So notice when you are giving your power away to things, to tools, to things outside of yourself, and when you are just tapping in and igniting certain energy. So I know there's probably a really long intro about a hat and my outfit, but there's so much attached to it. There's so much power in it. And here's why you heard me mention at the beginning that, yes, I usually will share Instagram stories about the gem show, sharing all the gems and minerals, sharing pictures, videos, just kind of going around and documenting live all weekend. And I did that for the first day or for the first like half day. And there was just something about it, which by the way, if you want to see any past gem show stories, they're saved on my highlights on my Soul Fam Wellness account because that's one I was using primarily at the time. There's a whole story on that. You can go find that on my Instagram page as well. But I was doing it. I was sharing, I was showing up the same way that I was used to for the past 2 years. And at some point I realized this just didn't feel good anymore. There was something about it that felt surface level, that felt like old energy. And I just decided at some point, I was like, I don't want to show up like this anymore in this way, just because in this particular event at the gem show specifically, this is how I have shared in the past doesn't necessarily mean this is how I have to show up this year in this space because I am a different person. I enjoy sharing in a different way. I've expanded, I've grown, I've changed massively since the last year that I was here. And showing up in the same way didn't feel good anymore. And I was like, why am I showing up and sharing in the same way that I used to just because that's what I've always done? And always as in like what, twice? So I just kind of ended up stopping the shares. And the reason being was I wanted to be more present. I was tapping into that presence. I was connecting with the people, with my mom, with my aunt, with all the vendors. And there was so much already going on to be shared, to immerse myself in, that feeling like the sharing of the stories felt like it was like something I had to do. It wasn't fun anymore. And I was doing it because, oh, well, I knew people wanted to see it. People have told me in the past that they really want to see this, and that's all great. But it felt surface level, and it felt like it was taking me away from being present, from being grounded, and being in the moment. So I just stopped. And like I said, I'm going to get back to, sharing the rest of the weekend, but it's going to come from like more of what were the lessons, my perspective now. And, this is also why it's been a couple of days since I got back, but I wanted a few days to integrate, to really allow this energy to land in my body before sharing a full recap. And there's like a nice dance of not allowing it to go too far where the energy is completely gone and you're a little too far away from the story to really tap back into it, versus sharing it so quickly that you haven't even integrated enough to share a true reflection. There's quite a dance to it. Let me tell you, I, never have anything perfectly, but this is what I'm working with while truly keeping the energy alive. So that's really the reason for my shifting and sharing. And honestly, I just wanted to talk about it. There's so many stories and so many crazy moments that happened. I was like, man, I just want to share this on the podcast. And here's the other funny part before I get into some of these like really powerful stories. So I actually brought my fancy ass microphone with me to Tucson. I have a carrying case for it and everything. This is the second trip I've been on, the second vacation I've been on, where I take this microphone with me and I'm like, I'm going to record a podcast in real time when all these things are going on. So it's live. Yeah, I didn't fucking record shit. I have yet to record a podcast on the road. I don't know why I keep thinking I'm going to do this, because then I get in the room and I get in the energy in wherever I'm at. And I just want to be in the moment, grounded, present in the moment, and not running off and recording about it 5 seconds later. But my brain thinks this is a good idea. It kind of is like the same thing when I was little. I would bring I'm not kidding you. This is not an exaggeration. I would literally bring 20 books with me on vacation, because I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have all this time to read. We're just going to be sitting in the car and going on a drive, and I could just sit here and read all day. Granted, I'm 12 years old, 12 or 14 or something like that. And I would literally bring this heavy ass backpack full of 20 books. Ask my mom. She'll freaking laugh her ass off. And I would bring all these fucking books because I just thought, oh my God, I'm gonna have all this time. And I probably wouldn't even read half of one book, but I just would bring it all and think it's all gonna happen, and I wouldn't do shit. Okay, that was the same thing. Luckily, I ended up being able to use this microphone to record a breathwork session that I host for a different community. So it wasn't, all for naught. But it was just funny. I'm like, okay, at what point am I going to learn the lesson that this shit ain't happening? Just experience the moment. And here's the big lesson on that one. Experience the moment, be in the moment, and then allow yourself to integrate. You can remember all the stories, remember all the things that happen, and then come and share about it and reflect about it. And that's one of the big lessons that I took away from this weekend. So one of the big things that happened, yes, I could feel my energy and my magnetism really just light up, because that was my intention. That was just the energy I wanted to show up with that weekend. And it was funny because it was immediate. And when I landed in Tucson, I was waiting for my parents to pick me up, and I had grabbed my luggage. And, I just set the intention for that weekend to, 1, experience magic and miracles, and 2, for just things to work out in whatever way that meant, just for everything to just go well, just for everything to go in my favor. And I wanted to see life like that. I really wanted to play with that energy. And so actually, I got off the plane, literally walked down to pick up my luggage. I had a transfer flight, by the way, too. So it wasn't like it was a direct. And I walked down, I could tell that the baggage claim belt had stopped. It was blinking lights, and there was something wrong with it. But I walked up and my bag was just sitting there ready to go. And I was like, awesome, cool. And someone was like, wow, you're so lucky. I can't believe your baggage is already ready. And I was like, hey, I'm going to take it. It was just the start of that weekend was yes, there's things just already working out for me. My bag is just ready for me to go. I didn't have to sit and wait. I just grabbed it and walked away. So I walk away, and I end up just kind of standing next to this wall out near the doors, waiting for them to pull up. And I didn't realize, so I'm wearing this hat. I had my full-on Southwestern jacket I think I wore in the last podcast episode. It is if you've seen me, it is my jacket that brands my entire body, myself. I actually did wear it in my branding photos last year. And this woman walks up to me. So I'm standing next to a cactus, whether it was real or fake, I have no idea. I didn't pay attention. I'm standing there with my luggage, this hat, this bright ass Southwestern jacket, and apparently next to this cactus. And she walks up to me and she's like, wow, you are just the picture of the Southwest. And I usually, previous Lindsey, would go, oh my gosh, I can't believe you said that. Not in a bad way, but just drawing attention in a previous life, in my life previously, that would feel really uncomfortable. And I would try to dismiss it or kind of tone it down. But I just leaned into it. I was like, yes, I am the welcoming committee. Welcome to Tucson, Arizona. And she just kind of like walked off and it was just like a fun thing. And it was so impactful for me because as I mentioned at the beginning, I grew up in Tucson, Arizona. So this is my hometown. And I was a very different person when I lived there. I was very quiet, very shy, I did not talk. This voice did not exist in the way that it exists now. So, and I've had a massive up level in the past year, even, which was the last time I was there. So, being back in that space and just having this inner confidence and this energy that was just accepting of compliments, accepting of interacting with people, and just cultivating different relationships and just really flowing with life and whatever life had to offer in that moment, that was new energy for me. So for me to just, be seen, get that compliment, and then just really like play with it. That was so new to me and it was just so fun. And I was like, wow, this is fun. Like this is fun to just play with life, to be seen and to show up and enjoy myself and not try to, stay small, don't be seen. And, I would do this before where I would show up with these loud outfits and then someone would compliment. And I'd be like, oh my gosh, no, don't see me. I like feel really uncomfortable and like almost like push it away. Like, no, take it back, take it back. And so this was just a real confirmation for me that while I knew that there was a lot more up-leveling, expansive energy happening in my body, feeling more comfortable interacting with people in that way was that confirmation for me of like, yeah, this is fun. This is the energy that I've been cultivating, that I've been wanting. So, we go off to literally my parents picking me up from the airport and we stop at the gem. Like we go straight to the gem show. There ain't no stopping. There is no going home. Oh, no. We go straight to the very first gem show. And if you've never been, it is different shows all over the city. There's massive tents. It's off the highway. It's at these, outdoor parking lots. It's all over the place. All kinds of places. It's hard to describe the vastness, the bigness of it. Tucson also has very little activities unless you're there in January. Just gonna be super honest. Yes, there's hiking. It's beautiful. When I was a child, I did not love it. I could not wait to get out because I was like, there's nothing here. And that was just my childlike attitude, seeing that, oh my gosh, the grass is greener on the other side of like literally any type of grass, right? So I have a new appreciation for it as an adult. And it was funny because I sat next to a woman who was also going to the gem show on the way out there. And we were talking and having a nice conversation. And there's this guy behind us when we get off and he was like, hey, I heard you guys talking about the Tucson Gem Mineral Show. Like, what is it? Like, are you going? And we're like, yeah, like, do you not know about it? Have you ever been here? He's like, no, me and my wife are just, this is our first time visiting Tucson. And I was like, oh, wait, and you picked this week to visit? That's fucking hilarious. He's like, yeah, I looked it up. I saw that there was this thing called the Gem and Mineral Show, but like, whatever. Felt like it wasn't a big deal. When you're like traveling and you look up just to make sure there's not some like massive event that's going to take over your vacation, just to like check to make sure. Yeah, he thought, oh no, I'm good. Just this gem show thing? We'll still go. I'm like, dude, this is the only thing this entire city has ever. And you showed up on the same week of it. Clearly, the rocks and minerals would like to call you in. He also looked at me like I had three heads. I was like so excited. I'm in this hat. I'm in this loud outfit. And he's like, the fuck? I don't know if they ended up going. I sent him to a certain show and, his wife was like, what in the hell? Me and this other woman are like, yes, you should go. This is the best place ever. It's so much fun. Who knows? But it was just funny that there were totally people on that plane who had no idea what it was. And it's probably one of the biggest things Tucson has going for it ever. And I'm allowed to say that. I lived there for 18 years, okay? There ain't nothing else going on there. There's hiking. It's pretty. It's all great. It was a good place to grow up. I probably didn't appreciate it as much, which I feel like most people don't appreciate where they grew up until they leave. And then they're like, oh shit, that was kind of nice, right? I should go back. Anyways, I digress. So we go straight to the gem show, straight to the first show. And the gem show is a great place for you to practice decision making. I think I definitely talked about this in a past podcast episode. I think like 2 back. I used to struggle massively with making the smallest decisions. So you can imagine 2 years ago, Lindsay, trying to make decisions on what rocks to buy, why to buy them. There's shit everywhere. There's high quality, low quality, mid quality, people trying to scam you, like really great stuff. There's everything. You have to be on point with your discernment at this place because it's got everything, everyone, all kinds of shit. And you could absolutely waste your money on some fake shit if you don't know what you're doing and you don't know who to talk to. And you got to really ask some questions and you got to trust your intuition, and this will really test that. Is all I have to say. This experience will test the shit out of that. And you will learn. You walk into that place and you will absolutely learn a lesson if you're willing. Now, granted, there's people in there that don't learn shit, so maybe not. So it tests your decision making. It tests my decision making personally. And as I said, I really have been more grounded and present, and just not only grounded and present in life, but just really loving life. That's part of what the microdosing, which I talked all about in the last episode, so I'm not going to go into that, but that's part of what has really allowed me to enjoy my life as is right now, be here right now, and not trying to future project all the time. And so I was like, you know what? I'm just going to relish in this energy. I'm going to relish in just enjoying. If I feel really called to something, I'm going to practice when I'm called to something and just follow it. And I did. It's definitely challenging. I'm not going to lie, but that was what really happened. And also just fun, like playing around, having fun. You know, it's a lot of gems and rocks and minerals. Pretty much everything you see behind me on my desk here is from the gem show. I'd say like 95% of it. This year, other years. And what you're not seeing is also this entire grid that's like in my corner. I got a bunch over there on the wall. I mean, at this point, my entire house is full of it. And, you know, when I put them around the house, it's very intentional. So, you know, there's a rhyme and reason to everything. It's not just random. But I also wanted to lean into just playing, having fun. There's this one tent, this one vendor who, you know, I bought some sound instruments from in the past, and they're really fun. And my mom was actually having like a pretty bad headache the day that we went. And so we were in this one tent with sound because I was like, oh, I really want to go in. And they have, you know, gongs, singing bowls, drums, literally every single sound instrument you could ever want or imagine. Now, are they the highest quality ever? No. But are they the lowest either? No. So they're kind of somewhere in between. They're a good place to get some starter stuff. And she was having a headache, and I saw some tuning forks, and I was like, oh my gosh, tuning forks was one of the things that I really knew was going to be at the gem show, and I really wanted to research, look at, lean into. It was something that was calling to me in a way, and I didn't know why. I didn't know anything about them, but I saw them, and I was like, oh my gosh, let's go play with them. And so we were playing around with them, figuring it out, talking to one of the people who worked there. She was telling us all about them, how she uses them for her sound healings. And my mom was like, well, shoot, I have a headache. And so like, let's just see if these things work. And so they were all the chakras, a full set of the chakras. So she was just playing with it and using them on her crown. And she literally is like, I think she plays with them, kind of walks away. We're like messing with the gong. There was this beautiful gong. If I didn't already have one, I totally would have bought that one. It has this like massive amethyst stand on the bottom. Anyway, she's like, wow, my headache is literally gone. And all I did was use that tuning fork. She's like, holy cow, like I think I need to get these. And she had already been, you know, kind of talking about the tuning forks. So someone had brought the tuning forks up to her recently as well. So it was in her field too. So she's like, this really helped me. Like, I feel like this is going to be, you know, this is something I really need to get for myself. And I was like, okay, like I was playing around with them a little bit. I was like, man, this is something I really wanted. Like, I don't know. Is this gonna, I was trying to logic my way into it, which I've talked about this before. Having an intuitive hit and then trying to logic your way into this decision is never a great combo, but that's exactly what I was doing. And I was like, I don't know. Like, you go buy them. Like, I'll think about it. So we leave, we walk around, we go to some other vendors, my aunt shows up. She was an hour or so later than me. My dad was with us that day. He does not love the gem show. Shout out if you're listening. But he did go with us day one. He was our lunch provider and airport transport that day. So he was, and going back and forth to the car to bring some of our stuff so we didn't have to carry it. So he was a huge help that day. Although I think he was very much over and done with it before our day was even over. But he was with us, and I was looking at the tuning forks and walked away, and I was like, you know what? If I really want to get them, I can come back. Like, they're still here. We're not leaving yet. So anyways, our day goes on. We talked to some more people, and he's coughing a lot. And I was like, good God, man. Like, he has a constant cough. I've been working with him for a long time. There's lots and lots of layers to this cough. So it's a whole thing. It's physical, emotional, spiritual, energetic. It's got layers. This cough has layers. But anyways, he had been feeling a little unwell, so this cough was really coming back full force. And I was like, it just hit me as we were walking. I was like, I think we were trying to find my mom and my aunt. They had disappeared from me and him. And I was like, we were walking back towards that sound tent, and I was like, come here, follow me. We're going to go do something. And he's like, what? What are we doing? I was like, come on, just come here. So I take him to the sound tent, or the sound, I don't know what it was called, sound frequency tools, instruments vendor. And I was like, I want to play. I want to just like see how these tuning forks impact you, if at all. And he's like, oh, this stuff doesn't work. This is stupid. And I was like, okay, whatever. Well, just to humor me, right? And I was like, just stand here. I'm just going to like give you a tuning fork frequency healing. And so I like took there was a set there you could kind of play with. And I was, muscle testing, like which ones to use. And I just in the shop, in this vendor, was just basically giving him a full session, like with the conscious intention of healing his cough, or at least diminishing it in some point. And it must have looked like I knew what I was doing, because all of a sudden this random woman comes up and she's like, oh my gosh, what are you doing? And I told her, I was like, oh yeah, I'm like using the tuning forks. I said he had a cough. So I was just trying to like, rebalance his energy. And so she starts asking me about the tuning forks as if I worked there, or like as if I like did this for a living. Okay, I do energy work for a living, but I've never used tuning forks until that day in this lifetime. And obviously I knew what looked like I knew what I was doing. And she's like, oh my gosh, like do me. I was like, what the fuck? She comes up to me and she's like, yeah, can you like give me a session too? And I was like, okay, sure. She's like, here, I have this problem and this problem. And like my lungs are kind of sensitive, and I have this. And she's like literally out of nowhere telling me all these problems that she has. And she's like, hey, can you give me a session? And I was like, okay, sure. Like dad, you just like step aside. So I end up giving this random woman in the sound healing frequency store, or at this vendor, a tuning fork healing. And I was like, oh yeah. She's like, oh my gosh, I feel so much better. Like, this is great. It was the craziest, wildest thing. So I basically gave my first tuning fork healing session at the gym show, at the random vendor. And after that, I don't remember if it was right then and there or I walked away and came back, but I was like, okay, I need these tuning forks. Like, there's something about them that really resonates with me and my energy. And they were already kind of calling to me beforehand. This just like really sold the deal, which, by the way, also, my dad will never give credit to this, but his cough did diminish significantly after that. I was like, dude, you're not coughing as much. He's like, oh, it wasn't that. Of course, it could never be that. If you're listening, I love you so much. But really, it helped tremendously. So at that point, I sold myself on the tuning forks. I can like sell myself on lots of shit, and that was one of them. So I am now a proud owner of a set of tuning forks, and not just that set. So I'm going to finish the tuning fork story and then come back because it extends. So I bought them. I go home. I also am kind of playing with some crystal gridding. My mom does a lot of crystal gridding. She's done a lot of stone medicine work and learning about that. I just hear what she tells me. But intuitively, I've done a few crystal grids on people, like drawing out the bodies from that standpoint. And these are all remote, by the way. So my husband was actually at an event the same weekend, and he was running a half marathon with a vest. Yes, with weight. And he's been, having some back issues here and there. And so for him to actually even go to this event and be able to do this run with the weight was a massive, massive, massive thing for him. I'm so, so proud of him. And so he's there the same weekend. And at some point, I'm like, hey, I really want to, I think he was really sore after the event actually. And so I was like, hey, I'll put a crystal grid on you remotely and, help your healing process. And as I was doing that, I had seen someone else on Instagram a couple days before do a crystal grid and then activate it with some kind of sound. And I was like, oh my gosh, I never thought about that. So after I had purchased these tuning forks, I'm like, I'm going to play around with these because yes, I can use them for myself in person, but how else could I bring them to my sessions, to my remote clients, things like that? And so I'm playing around with creating this grid for my husband on him remotely, and then activating the energy with specific tuning forks. And oh my gosh, it just, one, he really healed up fast. Like he was not sore for very long. Now, granted, I was giving him lots of supplements as well. I had tested him previously what supplements that he needed to take afterwards to really help his body recover really fast. And then I was doing all of this crystal gridding and tuning fork and sound healing on him remotely afterwards. And I was like, wow, this just opened up a whole new world of frequency and energy healing that I can offer and that I can do and I can play with. And I was like, there was something that just clicked. Like there was something that was like, I need to lean into this even more. So I was really, really excited about the tuning forks. At this point, I'm thinking I'm done. Like I'm done with the tuning forks. I'm good to go. I got my set, right? I clearly am just intuitively using them at this point. I was like, yay, I'll figure out how to use them a little bit more, but I know certain points to do them. I can figure this out intuitively. I'm going to muscle test all the things, right? We get to the last day on Monday, the day before I leave. And I'm just gravitated towards this back corner. My aunt's looking at something else. We're at a totally different show. I'm gravitated towards this back corner where this vendor is at, and I see these tuning forks standing up, and I was like, oh my gosh, I already have tuning forks. He has crystal bowls and all these things. I was like, no, I already bought tuning forks. But I'm like, what is that one? The look of it, I was just so intrigued. I was like, I got to go talk to this guy. And it was so unconscious. It was almost like my body just kind of gravitated towards the back corner where this guy was. And I was like, okay, I need to see what this is all about. So I gravitate towards there. I end up talking with him, ask him a bunch of questions. I have to show you, again, if you're watching this on video, that's why this episode is going to be really good to watch because I'm showing you lots of things. Okay, this is the fork. Obviously, I purchased it. This is the tuning fork that drew me in. It's the gamma frequency, and it has 3 weights on it. And come to find out, yes, the 3 weights are fun and cool. But he said it was really just so that it wasn't super, super tall. He said before, because of the frequency of it, they had to make it way taller. So by putting more weights on it, they could make it shorter. But this is the thing that drew me in. And I was like, there's something about this. I need to go find out more about him. So I did. And this guy had all kinds of cool tuning forks. So the ones I had bought from the other place were all the chakras. This guy had, so that one's the gamma waves. I got another one. I ended up buying a whole set from him too. So spoiler alert, now I have a lot. He also had something, this is the biofield one. I got a Kundalini frequency, the Schumann resonance, which actually that's been a podcast topic request. So let me know if you want me to talk about the Schumann resonance. Let's see what else. I'm trying to remember off of memory. They're all down here underneath my desk. But essentially he had all of these different specialty frequencies of tuning forks. And there was just, I was like, so, okay, here's the big lesson in this. So he's sitting there telling me about his tuning forks and saying, they're professional grade and, you probably get ripped off by the other person. And, I have this great price and all this stuff. Okay, first off, what's someone going to say? Mine's second best. You got the best one. And now that, mine's second to that, no, obviously this guy's going to sit here and tell me that his is the best. Duh. I expect any salesperson to do that. If not, you're a terrible salesperson. Okay. Like point blank. So this guy's like, oh yeah, like mine are the best. And yes, he's the developer of them. They're very interesting. And what I liked about him, it was that he wanted to actually build a relationship, as like a customer, and wasn't just kind of this like wham bam, thank you ma'am kind of thing. It wasn't transactional. It was like, hey, like, if you are really interested in this, like I want to, cultivate a relationship with the people that buy my tools. I'm like, that's awesome. And when I started to think about it, old me would have started to regret purchasing the first set, because now I find this other guy who has, maybe things that I'm a little bit more interested in and, quote unquote fancier. And he had solfeggio frequencies and the chakras, and he had all these different ones. And it almost made me feel like, man, I just didn't get as good of a set the very first time. Like, oh, that was such a mistake. But I told him this too. I straight up told him this because I would have normally felt that way. I would have normally felt like, man, I got gypped or I got duped or I made a mistake. But I was like, you know what? Everything happens for a reason. And not only that, if I had not purchased the very first set on the first day, I would not have been so inclined to play with them more. I would not have been so inclined to really expand my knowledge and awareness of how I could really use them. Even if my mom had purchased them, if I didn't have them myself, I wouldn't have thought about how I could really incorporate them into my sessions, into my work. And there wouldn't have been that level of awareness that I ended up creating from those few days of purchasing the first set. And so I told him, I was like, I don't even think I would be as interested in yours, in his like more specialty ones, if I had not purchased the ones from the other people. So I'm like, you can sit here and say like yours are better or whatever, or I get ripped off, which really I did not, because of details that are unimportant to this podcast. But essentially I was like, this happened for a reason. I purchased those ones on the first day for a reason. I was so like, it was like a vortex, literally, it just like drew me into his booth. I was led to him a few days later for a specific reason. And I told him, I was like, I don't regret buying a different set from somebody else and not you the first time, because I wouldn't be interested in yours today. And I'm like, so it happened for a reason. And he agreed with me. He was like, yeah, I totally get that. Like everything happens for a reason. It's not for naught. And so that's just a good lesson. I mean, even in something like that, where someone's trying to sit there and tell you, you made a bad choice, you made a bad decision, and not that he was saying this, but, there was obviously an implication of like, mine are better, mine are these professional grade, and, you maybe got ripped off. Salespeople can be like that sometimes. And really, it's the total opposite. If I had not purchased that, I wouldn't have been interested. So all to say, there was really something about the tuning forks that were speaking to me this year. And not only that, but the crystal grids. I ended up, if you could see this massive pile, oh my God, this is like half of it, of like all these tiny, like small gemstones. Something about the crystal grids. I've never purchased small stones before at the gem show. I usually get these really large ones. Like here's a big one. It's like the size of my hand. If you've seen any of my like crystal readings I used to do on YouTube, that's a blast from the past. I was a totally different person. If you go watch those, you'll be like floored at the human that I am today. But they're usually that kind of size. I like to hold them with my hand. They're all around my house, all that type of stuff. And something about really the crystal grids and the tuning forks were really speaking to me this year. And so I really decided to lean into that and just expand the frequency medicine that I have to offer to really support myself, to really support my clients, and yeah, just to expand my knowledge and awareness. There's something about, and I'm sure this is past life related, that I'm just very drawn to crystals. I'm very drawn to energy medicine. And it's not even like someone needs to train me or teach me. I can just figure it out. I can just intuitively understand what to do with it. My brain kind of thinks in like frequency waves. I see them really easily. And so I just started to lean into that more, not from a perspective of I'm lacking, I need more things, but just, hey, I'm really being called to infuse this into my work. This is just going to amplify. It's kind of like the hat. Do I need the hat? No. But does it allow me to tap into this expansive energy to really amplify what I already am and who I already am? Yes. And so that's kind of how I see the rocks, the crystals, the gems, the grids, the tuning forks, all of those things. So the tuning forks really, really spoke to me at that show and this weekend on that same vein of just energy and how I was feeling. So my energy body was also in a huge upgrade. I don't think I totally noticed it when I was in it, but now stepping back, reflecting, I'm seeing it a little bit more. And my digestive system was not the best while I was there. It was on the struggle bus. And I didn't really know why. At first, I was kind of blaming the plane. And now, taking a step back, I realize now, first off, almost any in person event I go to is always really working on my solar plexus for good reason. It's this expansive magnetic energy, and I'm showing up, being seen because oftentimes I'm in my house, I'm in this office, kind of hiding out in a way, like if I'm being honest. So, in person events expand my solar plexus massively, which impacts my digestive system massively. So, and my throat as well. But my digestive system was a little off. The tuning forks were super helpful. I was doing, stuff on myself and really supporting myself, but it just felt slow. And I was wondering, I was trying to think about like, why did it feel so slow? What was really going on from an energetic standpoint? Sure, it could have been food related. Sure, it could have been airplane related because all the radiation and EMFs and all the shit. I do have a challenging time with that. But when I thought about it and really like tapped into the energy of that weekend and what my body was going through and everything that I was experiencing and all these conversations I was having and all these connections I was making and just it was just expansive. My solar plexus and my energy body was digesting so much. And so when I went to put food in, it was like, fuck no. Like, we do not have space for this. I was basically living on my cacao every morning, which was great because I put protein powder in it. So it was fine. But my solar plexus and my digestive system was on the struggle bus and not nearly as much as previously. So it was not in previous in-person events, almost every single in-person event, there's like I usually at the actual event do not feel 110% like myself. Like energy wise, oftentimes I feel really good, but it's always my digestive system that feels like it takes the hit, quote unquote. And usually it's related to solar plexus, sacral, sometimes root as well. And which is all of the chakras that I really, really work with clients. Like if you're coming to me, there's a good chance we're going to be focusing on the lower chakras because it's so prevalent in so many people's health challenges. And that is the energy chakras that I really have worked on myself. And so I end up just attracting people in very similar situations. So my energy body was definitely going through an upgrade. I was feeling it. And I also had started my bleed like right before. So it was so interesting. I feel like my period ends up showing up at like the most inopportune, but also opportune times, depending on how you look at it. And so it was like this upgrade mixed with this inherent detox happening. And it was actually so great because I didn't have any pain or discomfort or issues. There was like a little bit of a low energy, but nothing massive, which that is a huge win for me because I've had so many issues with period pains, like stabbing energy. Again, I talked about this on another podcast, so I'm not going to go into it in detail. But when you go to in-person events, any kind of event, whether it's a conference, whether it's just, a day event, a retreat, anything that's getting you out of your comfort zone, that's going to somewhere new, meeting new people, big, small, medium, in between, whatever it is, really listen to your body. And you think it might be a coincidence. And a lot of people blame it on sickness. They blame it on, this other person was sick, so that's why I just don't feel well. But really pay attention to how you're feeling and what area of your body is really showing up. And oftentimes, even I can discount these things and say, like, oh, it's just my stomach just feels off. I just didn't eat super well, or I didn't get enough sleep, which could have all been very much contributing. But if I'm honest with myself and I look back at the energy of the weekend as a whole, and really tap into the energy of my body, of that weekend, of what it's going through, and now how I feel afterwards, it's like, no, if I'm being honest with myself, there was a lot of energetic upgrades going on, and my body was just feeling it, and my body was detoxing in the process. So sometimes it can be challenging to really notice that in the moment and really acknowledge it. So taking a step back afterwards and reflecting on yourself. Now, there's also definitely time to support yourself in it. So, yeah, I was supporting myself when I wasn't feeling 110% with muscle tested supplements. I was using the tuning forks on myself, all the things. And I mean, you're surrounded by gems and crystals at the Gem Mineral Show. So I feel like that really gave me just like a boost of energy too. But just really notice what your body is experiencing, especially in-person events, because it's going to tell you a lot about where your body is asking for more support, where your body is actually asking for more energy, but also just maybe some more healing, more focus, more attention. So that was a big part of my weekend that didn't necessarily stop me. And in past times, it's definitely been so extreme that it's hindered my ability to really lean into the weekend. And that wasn't the case for this time. It was just kind of like a nuisance in a way. It was just kind of like, oh, I wish I didn't totally feel like this. Like maybe I didn't eat something well. And I will say I didn't get a ton of sleep. I was kind of burning the candle at both ends most nights. So part of that's my own fault. But, the gym show's only once a year. You gotta do all the things all the time, and sleeping was a little bit of an afterthought, whether that's good or bad. So that's a lot of things that I was really drawn to this year. A few of the other things, which I mentioned a crystal grid. I made my first crystal grid. It's right next to me. I'll kind of put it in camera view so you can see. I made my first crystal grid. You can kind of see it in the back here. I'm actually very proud of it. The other day, and it's feeling super, super powerful. Like I'm still feeling the energy. I've been activating it with the tuning forks a little bit. So this is actually something that I'm going to be, when I'm called to add to any alignment activation sessions for my one-on-one clients and also coaching clients, because right now I really infuse the sessions with a crystal. But if I'm feeling called to do the crystal grid and a tuning fork, I will absolutely be adding that as well. So I'm super excited about that because I can feel the power of them. They're really fun. Now, I'm sure you've been seeing my fingers. Again, if you're watching on video, my fingers are full of rings, which I swear I go to the gem show and become a ring girly. So, which sometimes it comes into my regular life and sometimes it does not. But I was all into the rings last year, and it's just really continued this year. Some of them are from last year, some of them are from this year. But the other thing that was really on my mind, on my heart, and my energy field, which really ties back to the last episode, was the mushrooms. So there was so many mushrooms at the gem show in all types of rock forms, little stand mushrooms, like big mushrooms, oh my gosh, what's the word? Clothing with mushroom print on it. There was literally mushrooms fucking everywhere. And I've said this before. I'm like, is it just me? Like, am I just noticing mushrooms more, or are they just literally everywhere these days? And I think the consciousness of the collective and just in general, the energy of mushrooms is coming into our awareness more and more and more as a collective. And also I'm noticing them more. So it's kind of this like tandem thing. And as I started seeing them, I was like, wow, I really would love like something with mushrooms on it, just to kind of like memorialize like this time in my life. In Georgia over Thanksgiving, I bought a mushroom ornament for my tree. And it's just fun. Like it's been like a really expansive time for me with leaning into the medicine of the mushrooms. And this is never something I was ever thinking I would be interested in the slightest. And there's just been so much healing for me and so much expansion for me when working consciously with these mushrooms. And I don't know, there was just something about me that was like, that would be so fun to get something this year that's a mushroom shape. So ultimately, I was kind of like looking at different rocks and stones and that are all mushroom shaped. And I was like, I just don't want to buy something random to stick on my desk. Like, that's not fun. Spoiler alert, I did end up buying like a little, it's in my bedroom, but it's a little selenite shaped mushroom. So that was kind of fun and cute. And it wasn't as heavy. But I actually ended up finding this super fancy, okay, this one is my wedding ring, obviously. And the other one is this super fancy mushroom ring, which actually all of the stones, everything on here is real. So the black is jet. I think the red is opal, and then these are some shells, probably abalone shell. But the designer of these rings and the designer of this jewelry, my mom actually purchased a bracelet from him last year, and he's a super nice guy. He's an incredible artist. He actually has a lot of different like spaceships and like space themed items, and all of his jewelry is just like super high class, high quality, very artistic, creative. And last year I just really wasn't feeling any of his stuff. And then I saw this mushroom ring this year and I was like, okay, yeah, if I'm going to buy anything mushroom related, it's going to be this fancy ass ring. So I'm pretty excited about this mushroom ring now to just really, you know, expand the energy that I'm in this time of my life, and remember that this was the year that I was starting to work with the mushrooms, because I feel like this is really just the beginning for me with the mushrooms. I feel like there's a little bit more ahead. I don't know what, but they feel really, really special to me. And I was talking with, I don't remember if it was one or two people. Someone definitely was telling me, she was like, I feel like this is something that you've worked with in another lifetime. Like, I feel like this is a past life I'm remembering, like the way that I've been working with them, like the conscious awareness, the way that I've been using them to process so many things. And yeah, it's kind of like the energy medicine, the energy work I do, crystals, tuning forks, all of that energy medicine, frequency medicine, all of that feels very similar to how I feel about working with the mushrooms. It feels very like a remembering, like I've done this before. Like I pick it up super easily. There's a deep connection that's already been there from a past life, from past life, parallel lives, whatever the hell you want to call them, that is more of a remembering than a learning, because it just feels so natural. And there's something about the mushrooms that just feel the same way. So I was super excited to find something so luxurious and fancy that I could really like wear on me at all times. So that was really cool to find. Now there's this one guy that was not there last year that I have to share a few pieces from him. And I don't remember the full story enough to do it justice. So I'm going to just tell a piece of it, because whatever I say, if I go into more details, won't come out right. Now there's this guy who sells both euphorolite and alienite. He coined both of them. He has, I think, trademarks on both of them. And we met him a couple of years ago. I use the euphorolite in a lot of my sessions. Again, if you're watching on video, I'm just going to be showing you these. So these are some of the euphorolites. This is actually one I bought this year. And then this one was from a couple years ago. They're all different types of metals kind of like mashed into one. And they're just natural like this. This is how they found them. And when we met him a couple years ago, my mom actually knew who he was because she had seen him on one of her stone medicine classes. And I met him in person, and he was saying, euphorolite he named it euphorolite because it has a euphoric feeling when you hold it. And so I remember I bought a few pieces, but he also gave me one, and he said, hey, take this home and meditate with it and see how you feel. And obviously 2 years ago, I was a very different person. Meditation was new for me, and all of this world was very new to me. So I was like, okay. So I remember taking it home, meditating with it that next morning, and I could just feel the energy. And it was something so different. I was like, I have to go back and buy more. Like there's something to this. So he was not there last year. I've been using euphorolite for quite a while. I use it in sessions. I use it to ground my energy. I, send the energy of it to my clients in their sessions when I muscle test them for it. But he also found what he is calling alienite. And this is similar to the euphorite. It was found in a similar area, but it's mainly gold, platinum, copper, nickel, and a few other metals, but it's really heavy in the gold and platinum. And he cuts all of his pieces as well. He digs them up and then he cuts them. And the most interesting thing that he told us a few years ago was that when he's carving, he's just channeling the carvings. Like he's just channeling, and he's super into aliens. He, calls forth the aliens all the time. He goes out into the desert and, you know, sees them, has tons of videos of them, all that stuff. So that's kind of like the vibe of this guy. But when he is carving the actual stone, he is just channeling the carvings. He doesn't know exactly what he's carving, but he connects with certain beings and then channels them. And so he has decided to call this alienite. There's a whole thing about the aliens protecting the tunnels that they were found in. Again, I'm not going to go into that because I won't do that story justice. But I did ended up getting some little pieces of alienite. This is one of his channeled carvings. Here's another one I've actually been holding this entire episode. I will test different stones to hold when I'm doing any video recordings because it grounds my energy. I'm not going to move it, but no, I'm not going to move it, but there is the one that's been on my grid, and I think it's a Lyran carving. I might be saying that wrong. But one of the star beings, he carves those as well. So that was super interesting. And the only reason I was really drawn to actually purchase some of them is because, and if, you kind of you have to be sensitive to energy and really tap into it. But when you hold these pieces in your hand and you kind of pull it away, there's like an energetic field that you can feel underneath. And he was saying that they're very grounding. So that's why you feel it underneath when you pull your hand away. And I was standing there and I could feel it. I was like, oh my gosh, like, no, I really feel it. This isn't made up. And there was something that just made me really drawn to them. And I'm super excited to work with these as well in my session. So if you haven't figured out, if you haven't had a session with me, I infuse all kinds of energy work into my sessions, and including the stones and crystals that I'll muscle test for you. And then it's really infusing the energy and the frequency of that stone, of that crystal, and the healing properties that it has to give you in that moment. And so that's what I'm really excited about, adding the intuitively designed crystal grids as well, because it's going to do the same thing, but it's just going to be adding the sacred geometry and the energy of a grid, and then the tuning forks and all the things. So I'm super, super excited about all of that. But I'm trying to think what else I want to share. I want to make sure I go through all of the different stories that are important to share. And I'm just pulling up pictures. And again, if you want to see some of the visuals from the weekend, they're going to be on my Instagram highlights. It'll be Gem Show 2025. You can go look and you can see some of the visuals, some of the things that I purchased, and just some of the things that not everything's purchased, but everything that I was looking at. And we go to really high quality vendors because at this point, we have learned who to trust, who the high quality people are and who are maybe not. So I share a lot of good high quality stuff. Oh, there is this one other piece that I felt like I was even telling my mom. I was like, there's something here. There's a lesson here in meeting this guy. So there's a handful of people that will sell euphorite. So if you go online and you find a vendor, you're probably going to end up paying 3 to 4 times the actual wholesale price. So also, mind you, at the Gem Show, I'm usually paying wholesale prices most often. And if you go out to, someone else selling, say like euphorite, alienite, things like that, you're probably going to be paying 3 to 4 times the amount. Now, there's a couple other vendors that are selling it at the Gem Show that's maybe only twice as much. And then there's this other guy. I can't figure out the story. We can't figure out the details, but essentially he says he owns the land where the euphorite mine is on. So he knows the guy that found it, and he does end up selling some of it. And so we actually met him last year because the euphorite guy, Gary, was not there last year. So we met this other guy who was also selling euphorite, and he's a super nice guy. But when we walked up, we found him again this year. He was at the very first show that we went to, and he had this massive bandage on his head. and he had a hat on, so you could only half see it. And I remember last year there was something about his face, like it looked like he had gotten in like a car accident or something. Like there was just it was like dried blood and all of these things. But this year was like way bigger. Like it literally looked like there was like a massive growth on his forehead that he was trying to cover up with a bandage, and there was like dried blood all over his head. He says nothing about it. Of course, none of us asked about it. It just seemed like almost like the elephant in the room that like no one was going to talk about or say anything. And he just kind of like ignored it. So all of us did too. And we had seen him last year. So we just kind of started talking with him. And he's a super nice guy. He's like letting us dig through all of his like back stock. And he ends up like sending all of his stuff out to someone else to carve them and to set them in jewelry pieces and things like that. So that's kind of how his differs from Gary's. Gary's are all just kind of single pieces and bigger pieces. They're not necessarily jewelry. So anyways, physically I'm looking at this guy and it looks like his eye is like watering. He's got like all this dried blood on his forehead and next to his eye. And physically, he just looks unwell. Like I'm sitting there going like, how are you okay? Like, how are you alive? How are you functioning? How do you have your eyes open? Like physically, this man looks like he's in pain. And I was like, gosh, like I felt so bad. And I'm very empathic. And so I'm like, man, I want to like send this guy some healing or something. Like there's just something I want to help this guy. Like I want to help him in some way. And sometimes it can happen when I'm talking with people. This doesn't happen all the time, but often at the gem show, this seems to happen, at least this year. And I started like, as I was talking with him, kind of like connecting with his energy. And I was like, man, I just want to like send you some love, send you some healing energy. Like I want to help you. You look unwell. And I was just getting back like from his energy body, and like his soul was kind of like, no, he's taken care of. Like he's good. This is part of his path. Like he doesn't want to receive that right now. Like you just talking with him, you being here with him and having this conversation, just you being here, like that's good enough. He doesn't need to be anymore. And I was like, okay. And this guy's super chipper, super upbeat. There's not a negative bone in his body, at least like towards us, like when we're having this conversation, me and my mom and my aunt. My dad's there too. And we walk away from him after we purchased a couple pieces from him. And, I said to my mom, I was like, that guy had every reason to be absolutely miserable, to be super negative, to feel awful, and to project that energy onto everyone around him. Like he looks miserable physically. I can see it. Like I can see he's struggling. And yet he's standing there having this happy, joyful conversation and just enjoying life and truly just being so grateful and happy. I'm like, most people that have an ounce of the physical ailments and physical issues that this guy does are driving their lives into the ground and are complaining about it and have this awful attitude about life. And this guy's sitting here happy, no, he's not healthy, happy, grateful for life. And he's just living. And he's not projecting his own shit on everyone else. He might physically be miserable, and I'm sure there is some more support that this guy could use, truly. But I was like, there are people that have one tiny bit of pain, or maybe it is pretty big, but it's not like a total bleeding growth on their head like this guy. And they're sitting at home complaining about their lives. And this guy's out selling rocks at a gem show, and his head looks like he's going to like bleed off. And I was like, man, that is one of the biggest lessons. Because how you act and show up in the world is your choice. I'm not saying this guy didn't need some actual physical healing, like would have loved to help this man. But in the moment, he's choosing to show up, to enjoy life, and to just be here now. And so many of the people that I met were just happy, grateful. They're grateful for what they're doing. They're grateful to be there. They love what they're doing. We meet a lot of miners. We meet a lot of people who are very at the source of sourcing these rocks and crystals, and those aren't easy jobs and they really love it. And they have every reason to complain and they don't. So this was just something to really, bring to my awareness, to really watch someone like, look at how much that he's struggling, but or from my perspective, seeing what he looks like as struggling, and look at how he's showing up in life. And, I don't know what's going on with him. I don't know how he's actually feeling, but from what I could see, it didn't look good. And this doesn't mean that you need to ignore what's going on in your body. In fact, I have a very different opinion on that. But our body is speaking to us for us to listen, not for us to get mad about what's happening, because getting mad is saying something is happening to me, not something is happening for me. And we definitely have a choice to show up in the world, happy, grateful, joyous, and living life and calling in magic and miracles, no matter how our body is feeling. I told you towards the middle of this, like, yeah, digestion was not the best the weekend. My stomach goes kind of on and off, but I didn't let it ruin my weekend. I was like, okay, my body's talking to me. Support myself as I can, enjoy myself, and let's go. That's different than ignoring it, trying to shove it away, saying, oh my gosh, my weekend is ruined. So when you're having something going on in your body, there's some kind of pain or discomfort, and you're getting upset and saying, man, this is happening to me and I can't do anything about it. Or, man, now I have to project all my anger and frustration on everyone else. No, that's a you thing. That's a you thing that your body is telling you need to pay attention to. That's not everyone else's problem for you to project your shit onto. And this guy showed me that. This guy showed me that you can be physically in a lot of pain and still show up and enjoy yourself. Hopefully he gets sport afterwards, but that's his life. That's on him. So there was just a lot of interesting people that we met, him included. And it's just an eye-opening experience when you talk to different people with different levels of awareness and kind of where they're at in life. There was also this other guy I saw that 2 years ago, he was supporting someone else at their booth and running back and forth to the warehouse. And, that wasn't exactly what he wanted to be doing, obviously. And now he had his own booth last year. I just didn't see him. But now 2 years later, he's thriving. He has his own booth. He's selling his own things, and he's doing what he loves, and he's doing what he wants, and he's his own boss. And I watched him, go from, being someone else's assistant essentially to being his own boss, running his own booth. He was on the news this past weekend. And, wherever you're at now, if you're not happy with where you're at now, know that it's not a life sentence. It's not forever. It doesn't have to be forever. You can change it. But it's those small little steps every single day. I guarantee you this guy, all of those people who have grown, and, we see vendors year after year, and they've changed and shifted and expanded, and they've done things every single day during those gaps, those years that, we don't see them year to year, that propel them forward so that they show up each year differently. They show up each year expanded in a new energy and a new light. So I just felt like that was something that needed to be shared. I felt like someone needed to hear that, of that energy of just keep going. So I think that is all the messages that I really, okay. There's one last story. I know this episode is getting a little bit long, but honestly, this weekend just had a lot of energy to it and a lot of lessons and a lot of things that wanted to be shared verbally. This is the last piece. It's not necessarily about the gem show, but because it was happening this weekend, it felt very connected. So every Monday, I lead a breathwork session for my teachers community online. I've been doing this for a few months now. And unless I'm like on an airplane or like truly really busy, I'm not going to get anyone to cover me. I just show up and do it, which is why, I said I brought my microphone with me and, good old me thought I was going to record a podcast. So that's how I logicked my way into carrying this microphone with me, knowing I was going to have to carry all these rocks back. But I was like, no, it's fine. I'll have lots of reasons to use it. Such a lie. But I knew I was going to be able to use it on Monday. So I was like, okay. So I wake up Monday morning, and because I was in Arizona, it was going to be at 7 a.m., which is an hour earlier than usual, but that's fine. I was like, okay, I'll just wake up early. So of course I had been at the gem show all weekend and all day the day before, and I had not created my playlist for that morning at all. So there I am also creating my playlist at 1 a.m. the night before. Not recommended, but I did it in about 5 minutes. That was good. It was very intuitively created. And so I get on and lead this breathwork session at 7 a.m. And I'm very much at that point. It was Monday, so it was my last day being there. I was leaving on Tuesday. I had very much been in the energy of this magnetism expression and just like really feeling myself, if I'm being super honest. I was feeling good. At the same time, my parents' guest room is my old bedroom at their house. And so I don't think much of it. I create my playlist the night before at like 1 a.m. I get a few hours of sleep. I wake up. And again, this is where my intestines and digestion are not feeling so hot. But I'm like, you know what? I just got to get on this thing and do it and not think too much about it. And so there's a few minutes where I kind of get on and share whatever channeled message comes through and then lead them all through a breathwork session. And the channeled message was really, really on point. It was about, my take on the phrase healing journey, which I may share here later, but that's not what I want to go into here. And then I'm guiding them through this breathwork session. And when I started out guiding these sessions a few months ago, I was very much in this people-pleasing energy. I was very much concerned with, are people liking what I'm saying? Are people liking what I'm doing? And at the very beginning, the very first session I ever led in this community, I literally had someone get up during the breathing and commented in the Zoom chat, "Your music is too chaotic. I don't like it." And I was like, well, fuck. Okay, great. This is my first day and you already hate me. That's lovely. This is going really well. And obviously that was like a challenging moment for me to get through, and it showed me a lot and I worked through it. And since then, I've just been getting more and more comfortable with just showing up as is, being really confident and channeling whatever the fuck wants to come through. And I did absolutely that day. As I was leading the breathwork session, it really, really hit me and it hit my body that I was sitting not on my physical bed, because they've changed out the bed since then, but I was sitting leading this breathwork session in my childhood bedroom, holding this space, doing this energy work for other people in that same room where I had so much lack of confidence in myself, so many, like I just feel like there's an energy in your childhood bedroom. And now all of a sudden I'm leading this session in that same spot years later at 30 years old. And there was just a lot of energy that came over me in that moment. And there was a lot of gratitude that I felt. And it was just a really special moment for me to experience. And it felt like a really powerful session. The energy was just an amplified version of the whole weekend that I was feeling already. And the message was really just a channeled message. I don't think I could ever repeat what I said in that moment. And I got off that call there was no people pleasing whatsoever. There was nothing that I was trying to prove. It was just me being me and me holding space and giving people what they needed in that moment. And I got off that call, and one, I just felt so good. And it was this full circle moment that I didn't know was going to happen. Like I knew consciously I was going to lead it in that place on that day. I had planned it, but it was like not until I was sitting in that space experiencing that moment, experiencing that session, experiencing holding space for other people in that way, that it really just hit me. And I actually received so many compliments, so many people. That session moved them so much. They just felt the energy of it. And there was no people pleasing energy in me at all. So the biggest, obviously, the biggest lesson for me here and for you as well that you're listening, who are listening, is, day one that I had been leading that session, I was so nervous. I was so concerned if people would like me, if they would like my music. And literally, what do I get? Someone that's saying, I hate your music. It's too chaotic. Versus this past week, where I intuitively create this podcast, or not podcast, I'm sorry. I intuitively create this playlist at 1 a.m., not recommended, but it happened. In like 5 minutes, I have no plans because I had not thought about what I was going to say because I was too busy at the gem show. I was like, I don't know, I'm just going to show up and say whatever. Channel some like just beautiful message downloaded, and am just so in the energy of this session of leading. I didn't care how it was received. And I get requests for the playlist. I get, compliments for the session, for the message, for everything. And that's where people are feeling. That was the true confirmation of people were feeling the energy. Didn't matter necessarily what I was saying. They were feeling my magnetic energy that I was feeling myself, and that I very much was showing up in that day. So that was just a really cool experience to have. And I'm really grateful that it all lined up in the way that it did. Just timing and days just really lined up with itself. So I'm really grateful to have experienced that and to experience these little moments, these like mile markers of growth and expansion that I can really look back on and remember those exact moments in my life. And that's definitely one of them. It was a 30-minute session, and I think for me and everyone else, it was one of the most powerful I've ever been a part of. So besides that, I took all my gemstones home in my suitcase and did my big old power cleanup to the overhead bins with my 50-pound suitcase or whatever the heck it was. My check bag was also an exact 50 pounds on the way home because I had all those freaking tuning forks in there. So that's always really entertaining. And I met some incredible people even on my flight home. There was someone who recognized me from the flight out there, and we got to talking, and yeah, she was just super nice and really interested in what I do. And I was so confident to be able to show up and say, yes, because she was asking me why I was at the gem show. She was like, oh, do you sell them? I was like, no, I'm an energy worker. I work with them. And in previous times, I would not have the confidence to say that. And I would not have the confidence to share my work and really speak about it. And I was, teaching her some energetic protection and clearings for her to be able to use while we're standing in line to get on our Southwest plane. So there's so much expansion and so many opportunities that can really open up when you lean into your own conviction and confidence that create those magic and miracles in life. And I really experienced it in this past weekend. So it was so much more than looking at some pretty gems and rocks and buying pretty gems and rocks, for sure. I love working with them. They have such a unique energy and such unique healing that I love incorporating into my sessions. Absolutely. But any in-person event holds so much more energy than just the stuff. The stuff is fun. The stuff is nice. The stuff is what, invokes and ignites conversation. But the energy and the experience of the people in the room, of the energy that you bring forth, there's lessons everywhere if you are willing to see them. So I hope you enjoyed my reflection and recap from the 2025 Tucson Gem Mineral Show. I really, really enjoyed unpacking this weekend and unpacking this time. This is probably my longest podcast episode to date, but there was just so much packed in such a short weekend that I just had to bring it all here. And you know me, I just press record and whatever comes out of my mouth comes out. And I feel like I got through all the stories and all of the lessons that I really wanted to share with you. So I hope that there was something there that really sparked something with you, really resonated, because there's always lessons for everyone who is listening to this podcast as well. So that is all for this episode. Thank you so much for joining me, for taking time out of your day to listen. I would absolutely love if you left me a review on either Apple Podcast or YouTube. Subscribe to my channel. Make sure to follow on either Spotify or Apple. I so appreciate all of your love and all of your energy. If you really love this podcast, also share it with a friend. If there's something that I said on here that that really resonated or made you think of somebody, share it with that person and really help me get this podcast out there to more people so that they can really experience the magic, the miracles, and lessons that are there for them as well. So thank you so much. I am so grateful that you spent this time with me, and I will see you in the next one. Have a great one. Love you so much. Bye.